Hello, my name is Corinna Bertelsen, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Hawks Nest Tunnel disaster at the Gauley Bridge in West Virginia. The purpose of this video is to provide background on the Hawks Nest Tunnel project, describe the occupational hazards faced by workers, summarize what we know about the extent of the damage, and contextualize against modern-day exposures and protections. We will look at the construction of the tunnel, worker roles and tunnel conditions, the extent of fatalities, and the risks and safety standards in place today, followed by a summary. Let's set the scene for the Hawks Nest Tunnel. Why was it even being built in the first place? The answer is to create electricity. You can see on this map of the worksite here that the tunnel would connect a dam to a power plant. The water that would flow through would create hydroelectric power at the power plant near the Gauley Bridge. To do so, they would need to drill this tunnel through a mountain that was more than 99% silica quartz. The resulting water flow would create hydroelectric power for the electrometallurgical company, a subsidiary of the Union Carbide Corporation, and as a byproduct, the materials harvested could also be sold for profit. This was 1930, the middle of the Great Depression, where many people were desperate to find any work. When the company put out word that they were sourcing employment for a mining project, people traveled to the worksite to find work. A large portion of those were African Americans coming from the Deep South. You can see here that the blue and the orange were at least partially or completely inside the tunnel for their role on the project, which was more than half of all workers total on the project. Of those who were staffed completely inside the tunnel, where they would be exposed to the tunnel conditions for the entirety of their work day, 75% were African American. Reports indicate that the company was aware prior to the construction that there would be a high concentration of silica in the rock that they were drilling into. And although it was 1930, it was already known that silica could be hazardous to your health, and there were basic protections that you could put in place to mitigate the dust generation. Reports indicate that even these basic measures were not abided by the company, and there was a complete disregard for the overall worker safety and working conditions inside the tunnel. As a result, it's no surprise that only 40% of the workforce worked more than 2 months on the project and only 20% more than 6 months. According to Union Carbide documents, 80% of the workers became ill, died, or walked off the job within 6 months. You can see here this picture of workers inside the Hawks Nest Tunnel, coated heavily with white dust from drilling into the rock, none of them with any coverings to mitigate the dust. We don't know the true toll that this project took on the workers. Contemporary to the incident, the U.S. House of Representatives investigated where they found a, quote, utter disregard for all approved methods of dust prevention. They attributed definitively at least 476 fatalities due to working conditions inside the tunnel. Later, in 1986, epidemiologist Martin Cherniak reconstructed the incident and conservatively estimated at least 764 deaths attributed to the working conditions on the project. More recently, the National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health investigated where they found close to 1,000 deaths attributed to the working conditions, with potentially 1,500 more sickened by the disease. The high concentrations of silica dust would create acute silicosis, even in the short months that workers were working on the project, which would ultimately lead to fibrosis and demise due to the disease. To put this in perspective, much has been done to lower the risk of silicosis in the recent years and in the present day. However, it remains a hazard that kills 100 to 200 workers per year and is still largely tied to occupational hazards. The National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health has rigorous recommendations for exposures and protection that's recommended. Even at the lowest level of silica concentrations in the air, an air purifying respirator with an N95 particulate filter is recommended. And as levels increase, a more aggressive air purifying mechanism is to be worn in order to protect workers from this safety hazard. To summarize, the construction of the Hawks Nest Tunnel created extremely hazardous conditions for workers, where basic protocols for protection and mitigation of the silica dust were ignored. Hundreds of workers succumbed to acute silicosis within a short time after the conclusion of the project, many of them African American. Today, better protections are in place to reduce risk and prevent occupational hazards from silica dust. Thank you for your attention.